All right, good evening and welcome to the regular board meeting of the Board of School Directors of the School District of Springfield Township. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A reading of the mission statement. The mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high-achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. Roll call, Mr. King.
Mr. Bedard. Here. Mr. Franco. Here. Dr. Epping. Ms. Jordan. Here. Mr. Lapis. Mr. Nealon. Here. Ms. Sarsfield. Ms. Lipinski. Here. Dr. Terry Fussman.
Here. Announcements. The board at its discretion may videotape all or any portion of the public board meeting subject to the limitations set forth in Policy 006.2, Broadcasting of Meetings. Board meetings will be broadcast on Friday afternoon following the board meeting. Are there any public comments on agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. November 19th, 2019, regular meeting, Board Minutes H, December 3rd, 2019, reorganization meeting, Board Minutes I, and December 3rd, 2019, regular meeting, Board Minutes J. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franco. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Aye. Mr. Nealon. Aye. Ms. Lipinski. Dr. Terry Fussman.
Aye. Approval of the Treasurer's Report, Treasurer's Report E. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franco. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Aye. Mr. Nealon. Aye. Ms. Lipinski. Aye. Dr. Terry Fussman.
Aye. Reports and information. Administrative report, Dr. Hacker, budget presentation. Comment.
There it goes. Okay. Before I do my preliminary budget presentation, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Thorne and the Facilities Department, Rich Oliver, and the Technology Department, and all the individuals at the high school in particular who helped us to host the District 11 Pennsylvania Music Education Association Festival, Choral Festival this past Saturday. Despite the iffy weather, the show did go on, and we hosted over 30 school districts from both Bucks and Montgomery counties who came together in the auditorium. And what was really remarkable is the students from all of those school districts have less than a week in order to come together to get up on stage and to practice with a brand new conductor who was hired and was flown in from the University of Southern California, Dr. Christian Gracias, who was originally from Venezuela, I believe. And he did a spectacular job of leading the students in this chorus festival. The music was absolutely outstanding. It's on my Twitter page. I put a selection on there. I was so impressed with them. So just for all of these kids to be able to come together and blend their voices musically and understand the direction of a stranger who's coming in to lead them was absolutely amazing, in my opinion. So I just wanted to, again, thank everyone who was involved in terms of helping us to host this music festival. It does go to a different school district every single year. We volunteered to host it this year. The two directors were our very own Andrew Puntel, as well as Mark Norman, who is the music director at LaSalle High School. So we were happy to be able to host it with our neighborhood private school as well. So I just wanted to thank everyone for that. And Catherine, I just want to thank you for bringing this group of people to come see my very last preliminary budget presentation in the school district. So thank you so much. I know that's exactly why you're all here, right? To see this exciting presentation. Not. I'm going to try to keep it fast and simple. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to be doing that with a lot of things, Gretchen, but I'll try not to. So when we start talking about our school district budget, we always try to bring it back to why are we here and what's our job and what are our obligations and responsibilities. So just as you have heard us read the mission statement, I always like to start by pointing out what our mission statement is in the district, because when we talk about funding and our funding obligations for our students, we really have to think about that. Why are we here, and what is our role, and what's it going to take to be able to ensure our students are high achieving, resilient, and responsible, particularly as the world around them is changing and the demands are getting more and more challenging. We also have, as a board, a commitment to equity, which means that every single one of our students, regardless of who they are, where they come from, what their background is, how they identify themselves, has the same rights within our school system. And they have the same opportunities and the same access to those opportunities and experiences as any one of their peers. So we want to ensure that, aside from our mission statement, that we remind people of our obligation in terms of advancing not just equity, but remember, our goal is excellence as well. And excellence sometimes does come at a price. So the purpose of our budget process is to be able to meet certain district goals that we have and the obligations that we have towards our students. And these are those obligations and goals. It's what I call the essential goals in terms of who we are as a school district and what it is that we have to fund for our students. So first and foremost, obviously, is a top-notch academic program. That's our primary obligation as a school system, is to be able to educate our students. Secondly, and particularly in this day and age, we read this in the newspapers all the time, we know that the social and emotional needs of many of our students are much more challenging than they perhaps were in the past. We are constantly being reminded of stressors and the amount of anxiety that students have. We all know the world is a very different place these days, so some of their stress is related to the fact that they are concerned about their safety and their well-being. Some of it, of course, is because of the academic demands. Some of it might be because of socioeconomic demands. They don't have everything that they feel they need or that their peers have. So we have to be concerned about that, because those issues play out when kids come into school. They can't just leave all of that behind them when they're sitting in the classroom. We also want to ensure, and I think we've done a pretty phenomenal job of this, at the high school, we have over 2/3 of our students who are involved in some kind of either athletic activity, club, or organization. That's a pretty high amount. When I say over 2/3, it's actually over 80%. And I would say about 2/3 of them are involved in at least one athletic activity. So we want to make sure that students learn, whether it's on the sports field, whether it's performing, as we just talked about with the chorus, whether it's acting in a play or one of our musical programs, whatever the club, organization, or athletic activity, we want to ensure that our students have opportunities available to them. I can tell you that personally, my own daughter learned how to be a leader less in class than more on the sports field. She was a soccer player. She rose to the top levels in soccer, but she really learned how to be a leader when she was asked to be captain of the soccer team as a sophomore. And she had to learn what is it like to be a leader of people who are older than you are on your team, and how do you manage the challenges of that. And I'll never forget that that became part of her college application essay, is how she learned to be a leader actually through her involvement in sports. So we know how important extracurricular activities are for our kids, and that's true whether it's the Girl Scouts outside of school, whether it's our township sports and other types of programs, whatever it is, that's what keeps our kids engaged, having fun, and learning many skills aside from their academic skills. I referenced before when we were talking about social and emotional needs, Safety and security, which is a primary concern for all of us, not only as administrators and staff members, but also for everyone who's a parent. You want your children to be in a school facility and a school building that has up-to-date and safe, is a safe place for them to attend. We read currently about the school district of Philadelphia and how many of their schools they have concerns about because of asbestos or mold. We want to make sure that ours are clean. I will tell you, we just completed a testing of our water for lead, and our water is great. We don't have any lead issues, and we did that as a preventative measure. We were not led to believe we had any issues, but we did it to be proactive and to make sure. And so it's great to be able to say to our populace here in Springfield Township, when you send your children to our schools, they are up to date, they are safe, and your children's health will not be jeopardized, nor will their physical safety. And finally, in order to be able to recruit a well-trained staff and to recruit top-notch individuals to our school district, because we are in competition with other very, very fine school districts right next to us in this area, we want to make sure that when they come to us, not only can we offer them competitive salaries, but that we can make a pledge to them that we will continue their training once they arrive here, and that they will be insured of having what they need, not only in terms of the tools that they need, but also the knowledge that they need to keep up to date with their skills. So those are what we call the essential goals that our budget is crafted in order to meet. So this is how our budget process cycle works. It's a very simple cycle, and it actually begins almost immediately into a brand new school year. Remember, we operate a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. We are not on a January to December calendar year. So almost immediately when we come back into a brand new school year, we have to start planning for the next year because of state guidelines, one of which is the current submission of the preliminary budget process, which takes place at this time of year, hence the board vote. So in order to be able to give that information to the board to vote on it in January, we begin this process as early as October. Remember, we've just come back to work the end of August, beginning of September, and in October, we're already talking to our building principals, our department chairs, our other administrative offices about preparing their budgets so they can submit them to Mr. King for his review, so that we will have time to go back to them if we see anomalies or any figures that look historically too high. So we go back and we look at the history of what's it been like at Springfield Township Middle School for the past 5 years. And if we see something that looks like it's exceptionally high, Mr. Fuller is going to have to defend that and let us know why it is he's asking for significantly more dollars. So we do try to keep things within historical patterns. We also look at our enrollment figures. We try to make projections based on the numbers that we know. We look at our initiatives. What is it that we are planning, either through professional development for staff or for students, and build those things into the budget. So as an example, when we're looking at a new data analysis system, such as Linkit, which we adopted a couple of years ago, we have to plan for the funding of that. If we're planning for new testing for students, that is not state testing, but prepare students, we have to plan for that. So that's all built into the budget. So we always look at what are all those things that we need that we don't currently have. Another example that's also current for next year, many of you may be aware that at Enfield, we're beginning an iPad initiative for every single student at Enfield. We have to build that into the budget so that each child is going to have an iPad in their hands when they go into our new school building. We want to make sure that that's something we have to consider, is how are we going to fund those iPads for the students. The other area in the yellow that you'll see is planning for staffing. Around this time of the year, we start getting information about retirements. We're currently in negotiations with our teachers group, and as a result of offering them an early retirement incentive program to try to incent some of the people at the top of the salary guide to retire, we can plan then for hiring new staff to replace them at a much lower salary cost. So now that the early retirement incentive program has been offered, we know how many of those individuals are planning on retiring. And again, Mr. King can build that into the budget by putting figures in for people who are at significantly lower salaries. We also look at class size based on enrollments and which grade levels might need a new teacher because of projections involving enrollment. Mr. King then takes a look at revenue figures. What are we getting in from the state? What are we getting in from the federal government? A lot of those figures don't come in until later, so it's an ongoing process. We may not have some of that information until early spring. Similarly, as you'll see in the red, we have to plan for health care costs, and we have what's called first look, second look. So sometimes in between the first look and the estimates we get, those figures change. They can go either up or down. So we may not know until sometime around April exactly what our projected health care costs are going to be. We also get our PSERS information from the state. We have a better idea of what capital improvements are going to be needed in order to fix up facilities for the next year. And so it's an ongoing process that, as I said, begins early in the year, but takes us all the way up until the final budget is formulated and presented to the board in June. So it's a lengthy process that needs constant revision. And as you will see, we are a long way off from where inevitably we will be come June. So this is where we currently are. As I always advise everyone, don't panic when you see the numbers yet, because we always have as a goal to bring in what we need in order to meet that Pennsylvania Act 1 index, and we are certainly not at that point at this time of the year. Our index is the amount of the tax increase that the legislature allows us. It's 2.6%. Last year it was 2.3%. That increase translates into a dollar amount. So in other words, we can raise taxes by over $1 million. You see that $130 million number. Last year, the tax increase came in around 5.64%. This year, as you can see, it's a little hard with that red figure, we're at 6.5%. That means that we are currently at $2,837,000. And since we have to get to index, which is 2.6%, we subtract that 1.130 from the 2.837 number. And this means currently this is the deficit that we have to get rid of. So we have to be able to slash about $1.7 million from our budget in order to get to the allowable Pennsylvania Act 1 index. And I will tell you that not only is that a district goal every single year to get to that index, but we have been pretty successful in almost every single year of getting under that Act 1 index and getting to increases of approximately 2%. So that's really, again, another goal for us this year, is to bring that increase in as low as possible. This is where the money comes from. There's really only 3 buckets, as Ken likes to say. This is our total district revenue in terms of where we are right now with the preliminary budget. Approximately $62.5 million. And where does it come from? And you'll see we have 3 buckets of money. We get federal money, we get state money, and the rest, unfortunately, has to come from almost everybody in this room. If you're a resident, it comes from you. It's from local taxpayers. That's the tax increase that you get that funds the school district. And as you can see, one of the reasons why the bulk of that money that we need in order to fund everything we do in the district is because we get so little from these other sources. Under $500,000 from the federal government and under $10 million from the state government. And you'll see where that compares in terms of how that aligns with previous years in a moment. So here's a 5-year revenue comparison. And again, unfortunately, these little blips on the screen here, those are the federal dollars. Hasn't really changed that much over time. Again, it's under $500,000 every single year. Here's the state amount. Again, you can see, based on a bar graph, how little that is in comparison. It's about 20%, a little less than 20% of what we get in terms of local revenue. But again, in order to fund all of those things that I've been talking about, the bulk of the money has to come from local property taxes. And that's pretty much the case, I would say, with the majority of school districts in Montgomery County, especially in the central portion of Montgomery County and this portion, the eastern portion of Montgomery County. That's typically what you see. And what you'll see over 5 years, over a 5-year trend, is that every single year, expenses based on a number of factors, which I'm going to point out to you in a moment, generally increase anywhere between $1 million and $2 million based on what's going on. Most years it averages around $1.5 million from one year to the next in terms of the increases. Oops. So this again shows you preliminary budget comparisons over time. Ken, if you don't mind, if you could give one of those budget account pages to each of the board members. I apologize, I don't have enough for the audience, but we will put this as well as my presentation up on the website tomorrow for everyone to take a look at. So we use generally accepted accounting procedures, or what's called the GAAP accounting procedure program. And these are the budget codes that everything is coded into. So when we actually write down where money is coming from on a bill, on an invoice, on a contract, it's coded. And that code identifies what is being bought with that money. And so these codes pertain to salaries and benefits, our professional and technical services, such as our legal services, our accounting services, and so forth, some of our tuitions, property services, things that we need for our facilities, other services, supplies and equipment, and so forth, including debt and interest, which is all captured here in our budget, particularly notable because we're paying for the debt and interest on all of our new facilities through these last two coding categories in the 800s and the 900s. So in other words, we build that into our budget. We don't charge a separate amount for the things that we're doing in terms of our improvements. And so when we track these numbers over time, you can see whether they've gone up or down, and it's a little hard to read the chart, but generally what you can see and what we tend to do is take a look at what percent of the budget are these categories. And what's really significant here is the lion's share of the budget is devoted to the 100 and the 200 categories, salaries and benefits. And as I always say, we are a people-oriented business. We need people to do what we do. It's people working with people who are our children. We don't manufacture products. We don't make a profit. It's all invested in terms of who we hire to do the jobs that we need. So another way of looking at that, if it will come up. Oh, there it is a little bit more simplistically in this pie chart. And as you can see, the blue portion, the light blue, and the red are salaries and benefits. 45% goes to salaries of staff, and that's not just classroom teachers. Oh, thank you. That's not just classroom teachers. That's every nurse. That's every social worker, guidance counselor, assistant principal, principal, superintendent. It's also our groundskeepers. It's also our administrative assistants in our offices. Thank you, Linda. It's Linda Henke, who's helping with our technology this evening. It's everyone who works in our school district doing any level of job. So that's 71% of the budget. And as you can see in all those other little slivers that were described on the previous page, they don't really make up a whole heck of a lot. Even supplies and equipment, including all of our textbooks, including those iPads, those computers, and so forth, it's really a very minuscule portion of our budget, which tells one very important lesson, and that is if you want to slash your budget, you have to cut people. That's really the only way to have a significant dent in a budget. You either don't continue to hire, you cut people, or you stop hiring in the future. And unfortunately for us, this is one of the major reasons why we cannot slash people or stop hiring. Because if you take a look at the enrollment figures, and we've used this information to help us in terms of our planning to build a brand new school, and to help us with our planning in terms of building our fields and our facilities, we have been growing in leaps and bounds. Our school district as a total group of schools has increased in size by over 20% in the last decade. Those are the numbers in less than a decade from the 2012-2013 school year. You see an increase of over 300 children. 300 children need teachers. They need books. They need iPads. They need supplies. They need guidance counselors. They need nurses, and so forth. So that accounts for where the money goes. So expenses are going to have to go up as our enrollment increases, but along with just the numbers, the types of children that we are seeing in our district are changing. So let's take a look at enrollment first, and what you'll see is our 11-year growth, again, over 500 students, over a 20%, 25% actually increase in the past decade. That's necessitated many new classroom positions in order to keep class size at a reasonable level. It's also included related services staff, including special education, occupational therapists, excuse me, physical therapists, emotional support teachers, autistic support teachers, and so forth. When you look at number 2, along with the increase in the numbers come the increase in the issues that kids bring. If you look at our socioeconomically disadvantaged population, just like the rest of Montgomery County, our population has significantly increased. In other words, many of the children in our school district, and this was not true 10 years ago, can now be categorized as poor. They come to us as homeless, foster children, doubling up and living with other family members, an aunt and uncle, for example, living in apartments, and they are officially designated by a federal designation as being poor. And you can see what the increase is over 10 years, several 100%. Similarly, we are finding more of an influx of what we call our Ls, our English language learners, children whose native language is not English. They literally are coming to us not just as kindergartners moving in, but often 10th grade and above. They're walking into our high school without being able to speak a word of English or limited English proficiency skills. And you can see again the differences. 13 students 10 years ago, we're now up to 58, and that number is continuing to grow. Our special ed population, not only is it a high number, but those are often complicated needs that we are required to meet. So many of the children in our special education program are not only getting special education services because of a learning disability, they may also have a speech deficiency. They may have physical needs which have to be met, and those require special therapies as well. We talked about the updated facilities, and finally, of course, the mental and emotional health needs, where we've seen a huge increase in terms of what we need to deal with them. That necessitates social workers, guidance counselors, and psychologists as well, all of which we've had to hire over the past several years. So not only do the numbers themselves increase, but the nature of who those students are has changed. So these are some of the major areas of expense. This is not a flat addition problem where you just add up all these numbers and say, well, that takes into account the additional increase in terms of the taxes for this year. The reason for that is because in other areas, the numbers may have gone down. So you can't just add up all these numbers. But they do give a story. They paint a picture of what some of the major areas are that we are contending with. One is the need for new positions, and we have argued and wrangled and discussed and debated for many, many months which new positions we actually need. And I will tell you that when we first began talking about this in October, and I asked all of the administrators to present their needs to me for new staffing, that number was up to 13. And we've whittled it down out of necessity to 5.5. And when I say out of necessity, we looked at what are our priorities. What can we live without? And what do we absolutely have to have for next year? Whether it's a class size issue, whether it's a special education issue, what do we absolutely have to have? And so that's the number where we are now. All of our staff are under some type of a contract, whether it's our support staff, our professional staff, our administrative staff. We are in the midst of some of those contracts. It might be year 2 or year 3. We have contractual obligations. As I mentioned previously, we're in the middle of negotiations with our teachers. And you can imagine that the teachers want certain things. And in order to be able to give them the things that they want, we want certain things too, especially concessions in terms of, for example, how much are they contributing towards health care? They need to help us offset those continuing increases. So that's always a matter of negotiations over time. How do we give teachers some of what they are looking for while at the same time asking the teachers to contribute to what we need in order to maintain the budget at a reasonable level? Utilities costs have gone up, and even though we have a brand new energy efficient school that we built, even though it does conform to new energy standards, it's a much larger facility. We have other costs. We have new water service going in that's going to increase. So we built that into this budget. What is it that this new school is going to require that perhaps we didn't have to have before? Special ed transportation, other placements outside of our own school district, those costs are going up. Healthcare generally always goes up, even if it's a minimal increase. And of course, PSERS, retirement contributions to the state retirement system. And by the way, you hear a lot about PSERS in the news. Not only does the district contribute, but every single one who is employed in the school district contributes some of their own money into the PSERS system. It's a fallacy that it's just contributed to by the district. It's also heavily contributed to by each person who is an employee as well. So again, these are our budget goals and obligations, and I think now hopefully you can kind of understand where some of that money is going in terms of meeting state mandates. So for example, we talked about professional development before. There are new state mandates in terms of training for teachers. Teachers must be trained in suicide awareness every 5 years. The entire staff, every single employee. That requires time, and for some of those employees who are working every single minute of a contractual day, it might mean bringing them in at a time when we have to pay them to be here. So meeting state mandates, a lot of the ideas that we often see coming out of the state legislature sound really good about, we should make sure our teachers are able to do such and such. But for us, at the back end, there's always a cost to that we are mindful of. We want to maintain our reasonable class sizes because we know kids fare better when there is a low teacher-to-student ratio. We try to maintain reasonable levels so that our youngest children get more attention, can get off to a good learning start, and then those class sizes begin to increase incrementally as they go through the grades. But nonetheless, when we hear that we might have 33 students in an algebra class in the middle school, we say that's too much. We've got to do something about that so that kids can learn the way they need to learn in a district like ours. We talked about technology, textbooks, and supplies. Every time we change or introduce new courses, we also want to update the textbooks that the students are using, whether they're online or they are hard copies of those books. We talked about needed programs and so forth. So that pretty much gives you an idea of what our budget is designed to do. It's kind of a quick version of all of the things that go into the budget. The document's probably that thick in terms of outlining every single line item within the budget, but I think that gives you a pretty good overall idea of what we are trying to accomplish. So as I said, the preliminary budget, which is what the board will be voting on this evening, is just that. It's preliminary. I like to refer to it as a useless exercise that keeps us all busy for many months. It takes a lot of time and effort, but it's not the final budget, nor will it ever be. But we are required to submit it to the state. So between now and June, we sharpen our pencils, we bring it down, and obviously June is really the critical point when we submit the actual budget that we're going to be held accountable for to the state. So thank you, everybody in the audience, who you probably were not expecting you'd have to sit through all of that. So thank you for your patience. Thank you, board members, as well.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. Anything else under administrative report? Yeah. Okay. All right. New business? Personnel. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: certificated personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, extra pay for extra responsibilities, and conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Franco. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Ms. Linsky.
Aye. Number 2, Act 80, Burke 1 proposal. The Board of School Directors approves the proposal from Burke 1 in the amount of $730 to complete the Act 80 filing of corrected school district code reports to the PA Department of Revenue. Is there a motion? And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franco. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Ms. Linsky.
Aye. Number 3, approval of the 2020-2021 Eastern Center budget. Board of School Directors approves the resolution for the 2020-2021 general operating budget between Eastern Center for Arts and Technology and the School District of Springfield Township, Attachment K. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions?
I would just like to explain for the benefit of our new board members that this is based on a per pupil cost based on the number of students from the high school that we send who are either juniors or seniors over to Eastern for half of their school day for their programs.
Any other comments? Questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franco. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Ms. Linsky.
Aye. Number 4, Lobar Inc., change order, ELC project. The Board of School Directors approves change order number CO-GC-003 with Lobar Inc. to complete the playground equipment revisions, PennDOT changes, and to correct prior change order number GC-CO002. Is there a motion? Second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard. Aye. Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 5, acceptance of donation. The Board of School Directors accepts a donation in the amount of $5,000 made to the School District of Springfield Township by the Bond Family Charitable Fund in honor of Dr. Nancy Hacker's outstanding career in Springfield. The grant is to be used for Springfield Township high school students who may not be able to otherwise afford field trips, extra educational opportunities, or any other education enhancements. Is there a motion? And a second. Any comments or questions?
Yes. I just wanted to express my incredible gratitude to Nick and Eileen Bond, who have been incredibly generous to the school district in so many ways, but I couldn't be more pleased with how they've designated that this money be used, and I'm extremely honored and grateful for their contribution.
The comment, I just think this is an incredible gift. When you look at the budget presentation of what it costs to actually put a operation like this together, that is really a wonderful gift and tribute to you, Dr. Hacker. So thank you to the Bond family.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 6, approval of construction manager. The Board of School Directors approves the attached amendment to the construction management services agreement with Dewey Engineering, Inc., to include the demolition of the existing Enfield Elementary School and construction of the new athletic fields and other site improvements. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 7, 2020-2021 school calendar. The Board of School Directors approves the 2020-2021 school calendar as per the attachment L. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 8, overnight trip, STHS softball team. The Board of School Directors approves the STHS softball team to take an overnight trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, April 4th through April 8th, 2020, to attend the Ripken Experience High School Softball Spring Training. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 9, overnight trip, high school thespian troupe 1154, Thespian State Board meeting. The Board of School Directors approves an overnight trip to the Thespian State Board planning meeting, location to be determined, March 27th and 28th, for one student, Trey DeBose, who serves on the PA board. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 10, confidential settlement and release agreement. The Board of School Directors approves the confidential settlement and release agreement for student 202-00121-01. Is there a motion? And a second. Thanks. Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 11, workshops. The Board of School Directors approves contracts with Dr. Crystal Lucky and Dr. Edward Fieros for January 24th, 2020 in-service day presentations to secondary staff on culturally sustaining texts and pedagogy at individual costs of $600 for Dr. Lucky and $500 for Dr. Fieros. Is there a motion? And a second. Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Lloyd. Aye. Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Newman. Aye. Mr. Kinsey. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 12, MCIU Program Review Agreement. Board of School Directors approves the agreement with the MCIU to conduct a program review and evaluation of occupational and speech therapy evaluations and services in the district K-12 at a cost of $110 an hour, not to exceed $3,300. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? I actually have a question. With regard to the program agreement, the program review, is this as a result of any particular mandate, or is this just a district wanting to?
No, actually, we just actually had the resignation of one of our therapists, and before making a determination about who and what we should be hiring, we felt it was important to kind of look at what our needs are, how many students need related services coming into our special education program, and do a complete review of the program to ensure we have the appropriate number of personnel. We've had some concerns expressed to us from staff members that perhaps we don't have enough personnel, so we thought by having an outside group come in and really take a look at who our students are, what needs they have, the amount of time that they need for those related services, whether or not they should receive those services as individuals or in groups of 2 or 3. It would be helpful to have someone from outside of the district conduct an objective and impartial overlook.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Mr. Kinsey.
Aye. Number 13, confidential settlement and release agreement. The Board of School Directors approves the confidential settlement and release agreement for student 202-00121-02. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Mr. Kinsey.
Aye. Number 14, Franklin Institute. The Board of School Directors approves the agreement between the Franklin Institute and the Springfield Township Middle School for the Weather Traveling Science Show to be performed on February 13th, 2020 for a cost of $560. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Mr. Kinsey.
Aye. Number 15, emotional support programming. The Board of School Directors approves the agreement with the MCIU to provide support in a facilitated self-assessment of emotional support programming within the district between January 22nd, 2020 and February 7th, 2020 through IDEA training and consulting funding at no cost to the district. Is there a motion? And a second. Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Mr. Kinsey.
Aye. Number 16, CSIET foreign exchange student. The Board of School Directors approves the high school foreign exchange student from Spain to attend the Springfield Township High School for the 2020-2021 school year, sponsored by the Council on Standards for International Educational Travel. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Mr. Kinsey.
Aye. Number 17, Grosh Backdrops and Drapery. The Board of School Directors approves the contract with Grosh Backdrops and Drapery for the backdrops for the high school play Legally Blonde in the amount of $1,746.44. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Aye. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Neely. Aye. Mr. Kinsey.
Aye. Number 18, approval of traffic engineering services, Enfield. The Board of School Directors approves the agreement with T&M Associates Consulting Engineers to perform traffic engineering services for Enfield Elementary School in the amount of $7,500. Is there a motion? And a second? Any comments or questions?
I'm assuming this is a traffic study as we change the Enfield property. Is this a requirement by the?
Part of the
dot-
land development approvals from the township.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Reed. Mrs. Kaminsky. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 19, adoption of the 2020-2021 preliminary budget. The Board of School Directors approves the adoption of the 2020-2021 preliminary budget and authorizes the administration to file for Act 1 exceptions. Is there a motion? And a second. Any comments or questions?
First of all, Dr. Hacker, excellent presentation, riveting. Always enjoy that. Obviously, we need to submit to the state per the process. I wanted to ask specifically from our internal operations, what are the immediate next steps on the sharpening of pencils? Like, what's that process? And then when would you need the board involved again?
Well, thank you for asking about that. I'm going to actually ask Mr. King to answer your question, because his name was on the presentation, too.
I just work in the back room.
And he's a large part of what those next steps are, because he's going to see firsthand what a lot of the new figures are that will come in. So, Ken?
Well, the next step, early in February, I believe, 2 weeks, we'll have the governor presentation of the state budget, so we'll have a little bit better idea what the revenues are going to look like. We'll get additional numbers from our benefits people as far as what the percentage increases, actual percentage increases are going to look like. We'll have a little bit more idea about retirements. They've been coming in, as Dr. Hacker mentioned. We offered the ERIP, so we're going to look at that impact, as well as to continue to work on a successor agreement with the teachers union. That'll give us some more information. In addition, we've gotten some new numbers for energy costs, electricity and gas, specifically for the new ELC, kind of give us a better idea of what we can expect out of that building. As Dr. Hacker mentioned, it is more energy efficient, but it is much larger. So that'll help us. Also, we'll be talking with our insurance people, our property and liability insurance people, about what those costs are going to look like. All of these come down the pike over the next few months. Of course, we'll be working with all the departments as far as what their specific needs are, what their intents, what their goals were, and what ultimately will end up in their budgets that coincide with the district, the board, and Dr. Hacker's budget. So there's really a lot of tweaking and information gathering and just refining the numbers so we can get to a point where we can bring the budget to the board that's at or below index.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for all of your work on this. We appreciate it. And the administrative staff, absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Reed. Mrs. Kaminsky. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Number 20, I don't want to read this one. Resignation. The Board of School Directors, with great regret, accepts the resignation of Dr. Nancy M. Hacker, Superintendent, effective December 4th, 2020. Is there a motion? Nobody's making a motion.
My grandchildren are really going to be unhappy.
Okay. Is there a second? Any comments or questions? We'll make them all later. Mr. King?
Mr. Bedard.
Aye.
Mr. Franklin. Ms. Jordan. Mr. Reed. Mrs. Kaminsky. Dr. Pettis.
Aye. Yes, you may.
I asked our Dr. Taratuski if I could read my letter. I'll try to do it without too much emotion. Dear Dr. Taratuski and board members, please accept this letter of resignation from my position as superintendent of the school district of Springfield Township, effective December 4th, 2020. I tried to drag it out as long as I could, folks. It is with a heavy heart that I have made the decision to retire from public service as an educator and to leave this wonderful district and community. The past 8 years as your superintendent have been among the most professionally rewarding of my career. During my tenure in the district, I've been incredibly fortunate to work with exceptionally dedicated board members who have trusted the recommendations put forth by myself and our administrative team, who have supported important decisions that have moved this district forward, and who have partnered with me during challenging times. I cannot begin to thank all of you enough, and your predecessors who have served, for the level of confidence you have continually placed in me. I now place my complete confidence in all of you, that you will select a successor who will continue to help this wonderful district to grow and to thrive, and who will ensure that our students will continue to have optimal educational experiences, both in and out of the classroom. We've all worked diligently over the past several years to ensure that they have the best resources in curriculum, instruction, and technology, a committed, caring, a well-trained and well-qualified group of staff members, and optimal facilities in which to become their best selves. Most importantly, we've made a strong commitment as a district to serve and to meet the needs of each one of our students, regardless of their background, circumstances, identity, or experiences, providing each one equitable access to the finest of opportunities available. Please know that I am dedicated to ensuring a smooth transition of leadership and will help to support my successor in any way possible. I hope that by providing significant notice of my intent to retire, that the board can have sufficient time to conduct a thorough search process that will ultimately yield the best candidate to lead this district into the next step. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. And so, we move forward. Are there public comments on non-agenda items?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
They've waited so patiently.
They have waited patiently, and we appreciate that. Mr. King is going to
Do we just?
come on up, bring up a few chairs. We can sit at the microphone.
Spotlight on you. If you haven't done so already, are you Doug?
Yeah, that's Dave.
Have a big party.
My name is David DiPolo, and I live at 302 Suffolk Road. And first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Hacker, for all you've done for the school. Everything I've heard and seen, you'll be sadly missed, so thank you very much. We're here to talk about the Haas Lane property. I'm not sure, are all of you aware of the happenings that's been going on with the property?
Yes, we have.
And I believe you were all sent a copy of what we called the joint venture letter for Haas Lane, and I'm not sure if you've all had a opportunity to read it or not. That document spawned from initial conversations with the township, and we attended a property board meeting with the school district that not all of you were attendees to that meeting, so we wanted to come tonight and sort of let everybody know some community members who are in favor of what we said in that joint venture, some proposals that we have, and it's hard to gather a lot of people to come on a weeknight. So with that letter, we put out a petition.
Change.org.
A change.org petition so that we can get signatures for those who are in favor of what that joint venture letter said. So our initial meetings with the township and at that property board meeting resulted in things that we heard from those meetings that were, there's no immediate need for the school board to move forward with this property. Other people have mentioned, well, you need to buy it for a parking lot. So we've heard, that's a very expensive parking lot. So we didn't hear complete no's, but it sort of seemed like there was resistance to it. So we put together that letter to sort of put out some options as to what we think would benefit the township and would benefit the school district for one of those two entities to either purchase it solely or for you as a school board and the township to go in on what we were calling a joint venture, whether or not that's the right word for it or not. So, we tried to lay out a number of things that I think fit pretty well with what you were saying, Dr. Hacker, that we want to have excellence here for our students. We are, over the past decade and probably into the future, we're going to be expanding as far as the population of our students. Stressors are a continual riser for our students, so trying to have techniques to relieve stressors for our students, giving progressive learning options for our students to make our district stand out and look better than most. So a couple of those things that we mentioned in there were outdoor learning facilities, outdoor amphitheater, ropes course, things that we could do with that property and maintain its aesthetics and the integrity of this neighborhood, because most of the community members here don't want to see that property be overdeveloped with a 4-story apartment building, which brings traffic, presents dangers to our school children while those people are coming in and coming out and kids are going to and from school. So we tried to come up with what we thought were good ideas that could benefit the school district and the township now, and help us stay progressive, help us keep the students progressing and things like that. So I don't want to take up a lot of time, but we're not proposing the whole thing be a parking lot. Some gravel parking spots to just accommodate the overflow when we have events at Erdenheim would be an ancillary benefit to the school if it were purchased. But we think the academic things, such as the outdoor learning, amphitheaters, and we've heard from our faculty, some of our faculty, that those are things that they think would be very, very beneficial. And like you said, excellence does come at a price. So yes, there is something that you have to pay for that. But we as community members think that price would really benefit our children in the school district and keep us competitive with other schools that have outdoor learning facilities. And I think studies have shown that they are beneficial. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, what we're doing is asking the school board as our elected officials to really consider the constituents' proposals that were laid out in that joint venture and sort of not just end it with a short-sighted, we don't have an immediate need. Because we are growing, there could be a need, and once this property is gone, we're not going to have the opportunity to get it back. So to purchase something for the future is things that other school districts, universities, it's happening on a day-to-day basis. You might not need it right now, but you will down the road, and if you give it away now, you're not going to get it back. So we're just asking that, you take maybe what we said and if the opportunity arises to sit down with the Board of Commissioners and discuss, the potential for the purchase of this, and, just think about what we've said and hopefully move forward and do what we think would be best for the kids and the neighborhood. That's really all I have. I don't, want to take up too much time, but.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you guys listening to us and reading what we put out. And we, have that change.org just to show the numbers that support this. I mean, it was in a short amount of time that we kind of did that, but we wanted to get the word out and make sure that people are aware, because the property borders the school on almost sort of two or three sides. And the things that could go there and overlook our schools too, the buildings that could be built there instead of the school purchasing it, is concerning, to consider what could go there if we passed on the opportunity to acquire it and use it in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Based on the information that you said, we have worked to get a meeting together with the commissioners and the administration and several representative board members. That will be happening within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. So after that meeting, we will explore the information that you shared with us, as well as, the questions that we have, and come up with a decision at that.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has signed up for?
Question on that, is that meeting you mentioned coming up with the commissioners open to the public or not?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else, any other comments on non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, future meeting dates, an interim board meeting Tuesday, February 4th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Freeze Memorial Lobby. That's a tentative meeting. Regular school board meeting Tuesday, February 18th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Freeze Memorial Lobby. And there are board committee meetings, property committee meeting on Thursday, January 23rd, 2020 at 8:15 at the administration building, and an academic affairs meeting on Monday, January 27th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. in the administration building. Thank you all for coming. Have a good evening.